welcome to Spiritual Stories, the podcast where the unseen becomes the seen. I'm your host, Kim Eibrink Jansen, psychic medium, a spiritual advisor, and someone who has spent the last 15 years sitting in the space between the worlds, helping people make sense of signs, synchronicities, and messages that show up in their lives. This podcast is a gathering place for the stories that we don't often hear, the magical synchronicities, the split-second moments of knowing before knowing, visits or help from loved ones who have passed, the goosebumps that arrive right on cue. Each episode, we sit down with gifted, intuitive psychics, healers, and everyday people who've lived through something extraordinary as they tell their stories. Today's conversation is a very special one. I'm joined today by the talented Ness Tomlinson from Angelicness. Hi, Ness.
Hi.
Ness is a life coach, hypnotherapist, psychic medium from Busselton WA. We are good friends from a long time ago. Her experiences that she shares today will remind us just how vast, mysterious, and deeply intelligent the world really is. So settle in, grab a cup of tea, get curious, and let's dive into spiritual stories. I'm so excited to do this with you today because we have had some chats recently about different things, and we're like, okay, I suppose we're having more of these chats. So this is one that's super, super fun because you are going to be sharing with us from, you've been doing this work for a long time, but just in your day-to-day life and everything else, as psychic mediums, we too tend to have some interesting things happen in our lives. So there are a few stories you're going to share with us. Why don't you start with your favorite story?
My favorite story? That's hard to pin it down. Okay. Well, I guess my favorite story would have to be, I guess, my connection with my dad. Okay. So when I was 31, my dad passed away, and I had been working, doing oracle card readings and tarot readings and bits and pieces prior to his passing. And Dad always said to me, like, why do you do this stuff for me, for people? And he said to me, and I said, well, because I want to help people. He wasn't interested in the spiritual side of it, but he was kind of like curious to know why I did it for and what was my intention. And I said, well, I want to help people. So that to him took away all that witchy woo-woo kind of story behind it. And he was like, well, as long as you're doing it to help other people, that's all that matters, right? So it was about 6 months after his passing, and I was working part-time, studying youth work, and I had my own family daycare business and single mum at the time, and didn't really deal with my grief whatsoever. I was kind of just like soldiering on, getting on with life and doing what I needed to get through that situation. I didn't know really, and even 31 seems quite old. I didn't know what grief was. I knew people had died, and, when I connected to spirit, I didn't really think about it until my first experience with seeing my dad. So what had happened, it was about 6 months after his passing, and where my kitchen window was facing my driveway. They had a long driveway. It was the back of a unit. And I remember this day I was sitting there talking to myself, or probably talking to spirit really, and having this deep conversation as I do. And all of a sudden I'm looking up, and clear as I see you now, Kim, my dad was walking up my driveway.
Oh my God, I just got goosebumps.
I know, right? And he's wearing his shorts, what he always wore, and his blue polo shirt, and carrying something. I can't remember what it was, and he had those really, really short shorts and his skinny legs. And I just remember it's clear as day he's walking up my driveway.
Whoa.
And I'm like, what's going on here? Am I like seeing things? It was just like, I used to park out on the street and he'd come up the driveway to see me. Anyway, and I thought, this is really strange. And not long after that, I started to smell his cigarette smoke. And I didn't know that it was his at the time, but I could smell it, the aroma of his brand in my house. And I thought, no one's smoking in the house. Like, what's going on? And it just started to get stronger and stronger. And then I'm hearing him say, well, can't you hear me? the same as his voice was from, I remember him, and I'm like, what are you doing here? And he goes, well, I've transitioned now in a way. He's trying to explain, and you're not, I'm here to help you with the woo woo and let you know that basically this is real, but to help you with your grief as well, because you're not really processing it the way you should, right? So it was a really interesting, way to look at it, because I would have never have thought my dad in his human form would be this kind of sentimental.
Mm.
But underneath it, there was probably a lot more. But obviously, his soul, after his transition, needed to come and enter that space to remind me, to help me. But it kind of took me on my journey, because at that time, I was practicing mediumship or practicing spirituality and readings, but I wasn't really, Kim, working much in the field. I was doing it from home, but I was doing a few fairs and expos, but not really doing it for a living, because I didn't know that this was a thing you could do for a living, right?
Wow.
Yeah, he just kind of stepped into my life, and it was profound. And I still hear him, every now and again we'll have a conversation. And when there was real times that I needed him, like one time I went to Albany, and I do remember going to Albany as a kid with my family, but I don't remember specific places that we stayed. And I remember driving along, and Dad's having this deep conversation with me, obviously in my head, and my ex-partner at the time sitting there thinking I'm a bit woo-woo because I'm telling him that I'm having this conversation. And Dad's saying to me, you went to this Happy Holidays caravan park as a kid. And I'm like, huh? Okay. And he says, but don't go through Albany, because you'll add another 40 minutes onto your drive, right? And I'm sitting there thinking, okay. He goes, you've got to go through that way to go to Mount Barker, and then you turn off, and then you will end up at the caravan park, and you'll save all that time. And I thought, oh, okay, whatever. And then, of course, I'm looking on Google, and it was right. Something there. And my dad was telling me, because we used to do a lot of traveling with him, but he was still had my back, and he was like, come on, you've got to go this way. And I was telling the ex at the time, and he's like, you're just crackers, something going on there, but it was right. So that was another kind of experience with him, but he's really put me on my spiritual path, showed me all the things that I needed to learn along the way to
Oh,
get me
wow.
where I am today. So not that, he wasn't, it was kind of like a guide. I don't know if we'd say he was a guide, but he just kind of would tell me, this is what you need to do, or this is what you need to learn, and help me show up for all this kind of stuff.
They
So
do say, yeah, they do say that, especially as a psychic medium, it's in the family usually. Like usually the gift comes from generations and generations of either women or people who have done the work. And usually those from our family who are on the other side are the ones that actually are there to help us. Even this, I know it's a movie, but on the Addams Family, Wednesday gets her psychic gifts, and she has Goody on the other side, who is her spirit guide, um, to help her with her gift. And that's technically what we're meant to do, is actually refer back to our ancestors to actually um, get help, because they're there and we have that direct connection to them.
it's interesting, because I haven't really gone back in my family line, because from my direct few grandparents, none of them practice this sort of stuff. So I don't even know where it came
That you
from,
know of.
that
That
I
you
know
know
of. Well,
of.
my nana, my mum's mum taught me how to play cards a lot, and taught me how to shuffle. So, and who knows, it may
Who
be
knows?
there. We don't know.
Who knows? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh no, that's so cool. There was a story that you were telling me about with the Ouija board experience you had when you were little, and that's something that number one, I say to people, do not touch them. But again, like you've done that, and I'm like, oh, that's so exciting! Like that story has, like, tell everyone that story, because that just blew me away when I read that. But then it's probably people probably go, I'm going to get one.
Oh yeah, no, don't. I don't condone them, okay? I had my first experience though leading into it when I was about 11 with my next door neighbor. And I thought it was normal doing a Ouija board and seeing the spirits around and hearing them and communicating. And he just looked at me like, no, you're just like weird, right? And from that moment, I think, I just started doing that for myself, and with my friends would come over and they go, I want to know what my nan's happened to my nan or what's happened to my cousin now that they passed over. So it was quite an interesting time. It was kind of like that communication source. But I used to have a friend, Mel, who we used to do practice and get into all of that witchy kind of stuff back in the day. And I remember we were talking to the spirit and we said, oh, could you change our eyes so we both got green eyes, right? And Mel's got like the dark brunette coloured hair and, you're 15, you're living by the seat of your pants and you want to try something once, right, to see whether it's real because we ask for signs, but you never really get those big confirmations either. And so it's interesting enough, the spirit confirmed, I can't even remember what spirit this was, obviously not a good spirit.
Of course, they don't tell you who they are, do they?
I don't even think I even asked, and you wouldn't even know. They must have had the power to do something, right? Yeah, so we wanted these beautiful green eyes, the same. So I already had kind of like a hazily colour prior. And anyway, well, actually, no, we both wanted, sorry, I'm going to backtrack that now because spirits corrected me and said you both wanted blue eyes, right? Blue eyes.
And you had hazel and she had brown.
Yes, that's what it was. Yes, you knew. So it was kind of interesting. So we asked for having blue eyes. And of course, when we're about 4 days into this, they said, oh, take about 7 days. And I'm thinking, okay, we're about 4 days into this and we went to Busselton High then and we were at the change rooms in the toilets there looking together at our eyes in the mirror, and I'm starting to look and she's looking, we're going, oh my goodness, they're both starting to go blue around around the pupil. And we started to freak right out, whether it was our imagination or something was really happening, Kim. But we just started to freak right out. And we said, we must go home tonight. Because I said, I don't want to have blue eyes now. I don't want to have blue eyes, right? So anyway, we went home basically that night and spoke to the spirit and called him in and channeled whoever it was in and said, you need to stop, we're freaking out now. So obviously, as time went on, our eyes changed, but Mel and I still have the same kind of colour eyes. They're both very green, and we've got sort of a few little brownish speckles, obviously, around that colour. So it kind of blew me away, and I always think about it, and I always look at her and go, you still got the same coloured eyes, and, yeah.
So you had completely different colour eyes, then they started going blue, and then you freaked out, so then you ended up just getting the same eyes, like a combination of your eyes, actually.
Yeah, how it's just like, just really, really bizarre. I mean, that was my first experience with Ouija boards. And I look back now and I think, oh my gosh, that was like crazy. And, I'd done lots of things, Kim, with Ouija boards back then. And even at the age of 19, living in a property which I found, was a previous site for a church.
Oh,
and
gosh.
I didn't care and tried to enter the gates of hell. I mean, what kind of silly person does that? And we did it. One thing I will say to you was I remember sitting around the table and we were trying to go bit by bit, and into the gates of hell. And I remember it wouldn't go further. And it kept going to the letter B. And we were trying to get it to spell, and it got to BLU. And one of the guys in the house was like, Blue, because Blue started barking. This is his dog, right? Going off his face underneath the table. And yeah, the dog was protecting us. He was sitting under the table, which we didn't know, and barking and barking and barking and carrying on. And we couldn't enter because the actual spirit was acknowledging that Blue was in the room.
It was like a
And
protector, maybe.
yeah, yeah. And honestly, that was my last real experience from that, because after that, the house went chaotic. It was kind of like we got evicted from the house because we had all these people come and stay, all of a sudden, these random people, and the house ended up, a bit of a party place, and then we got evicted. So
Mm,
from that moment, I felt like we kind of hexed ourselves,
mm.
do that. And then I had to do a lot of work around clearing that and closing up that sort of situation. I would never, ever do that kind of stuff again. It was just insane. And I look back now thinking, what an
Yeah.
experience. But I had to do it
Yeah,
to
I think
understand it.
when you're a kid, you kind of like want to experiment, and particularly if you're inclined to want to know more about the spirit world, that's the first thing you kind of think of. But that's definitely, yeah, it is. As people who work in the industry, we all now know that it does tend to attract the not so great energies. So yes, we all do recommend people not to go onto them. There's other ways, guys. There's other ways if
There
you want
is other
information.
ways.
There's
I
other
know now.
ways. But I mean, again, curiosity is always there. I watched. Actually, it was a nightmare of mine for many years after watching The Exorcist, and that all came about with possession from a Ouija board, and it's just like I just knew then that it was not a great thing to have in your house, but and all those stories are all true. So possession's a thing. so
It
so
is.
we
It is a thing.
do have to be very careful.
Yes, yes, I know. And I was probably really lucky. I just think that
Very lucky.
whoever was in that house was causing chaos. And, we, from that point onwards, we had to find another house. And, it was kind of like crazy. And I do feel like there was about 3 years of bad luck from
Mm.
that experience,
Well,
and
lucky
not,
you moved out of that.
yeah, not that I think any of us were possessed or anything. I think it really frightened us.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. No, no, you were very, again, you had someone helping you and looking after you, which is, even if it is a dog.
Yeah, absolutely. Amazing dog, that one.
I also want to
Yeah.
say, again, someone who has done a lot of psychic surgery and psychic healings and things like that, that they are quite powerful on the other side. They can do amazing things. So when I heard your story about changing eye color, I'm like, well, yeah, they can do amazing things on the other side to facilitate things. I do believe, like as I'm getting right now, that the conditions all have to be met for it to unfold as it does. But yeah, if you've got people on the other side, I always say if you've got loved ones on the other side, pray to them and ask them to help you, because they can do amazing things on the other side for us. And that's a great example. I mean, changing your eye color.
Yeah.
Gosh, that's
I mean, I don't know what I was thinking, Kim. I don't know what I
you
was
were
thinking.
just having fun, but on a serious note, if anyone does ever need help, they can actually ask for help for certain things, and don't be surprised if things show up. I think the veil now is so thin that you ask for something and don't be surprised, within 12 to 24 hours you'll see something happen. We do have access to amazing powers from the other side, and we are very blessed to have, most people have beautiful spirits looking after them. So
Oh, absolutely. And then that
yeah,
doesn't mean anyone go out and do a Ouija board and test what I've said
we
either, because
definitely don't agree. Yeah. Well, there's other.
because
You can
that
just
doesn't
ask.
mean,
You don't need to. Yeah, the Ouija board just
yeah.
does tend to attract the I don't know, the more lower vibration frequencies, but God knows why that is how it is. But again, I'm getting kind of the history of the Ouija board and how it actually was set up is attracting what it attracts. So, but
Oh,
you are here to
absolutely.
tell the story.
I know, and I always say to people when I'm working in the White Cauldron, and the boss might have some little sample ones, and just use oracle cards, don't, or tarot cards. Don't buy one of these. Not to condone anything. I said, if you don't know what you're doing with it,
Yeah.
you could end up in a big mess, and you don't want that.
No,
And
definitely not.
I try to actually help them through that. And if you don't know what you're doing, you can end up in big trouble. And that's the big thing behind it, a good lesson.
Yeah, very good lesson. I'm so glad that you can talk about it. That you're here to
Yeah,
talk about
I'm
it.
not frightened. I think it's more so the experience that I love to use that experience to say to people,
Crazy. Yeah. How
don't tell
powerful.
when you don't know.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think as people who are interested in the spiritual side, if they don't have, and I'm saying, this loosely, if they don't get clear messages like we do, but again, as I say that, everyone does kind of get messages, but they don't realize that's what they look like. It's just, from experience and practice that we all know what they kind of look like. But there's much better ways to get access to information. So see, either one of us will help you. You don't need to,
Exactly.
you don't need to go that far. But you've also got a really crazy car story. Tell me about that.
Oh, yes. Okay. This is probably about 11 years ago now, actually, quite recent. I was working in Centrelink at a call centre in Bunbury, and we used to park because it was free parking, otherwise you had to pay, down at the back beach. And it was just a car park down in front of the beach that you'd go back on the walking back from town over a hill, and there was the car park. And this one day I was coming back and I had parked my car sort of about the middle of the last row, which was on the hillside, not on the beach side. And as I'm coming down the hill on the grass, I'm looking around and there's all this glass all over the parking, all over the bitumen. I'm like, what's going on? So anyway, I walk up and I have a look, and every single car along that back row, except for mine, every single window had been smashed and stolen items out of their cars, right? And I'm sitting there going, oh my goodness, my car. Because all I could think about was my suitcase, which I called tools of my trade, because at that time I was doing mobile readings as well. And I'd leave it in my car if I did any work in Bunbury. And my suitcase with all my cards and all my crystals and everything was in there, and all I could think about was if they've broken into my car, they've got into the boot and they've stolen all my tools, because that's the only thing of value. Anyway, I walked up to my car. There was not a broken window. There was not a scratch. There was nothing. My car was left out of all of the other cars on that back row completely untouched. And I
That's
always
crazy.
say, Archangel Michael, please protect my car on the road and protect my car and me at all times. So putting that information out there, I do believe Archangel Michael has always protected me, because I leave my feathers in the car and it's a little bit of a shrine thing, and hang crystals from the Vera Vision mirror and all that for protection. But I just walked back and I was just like, I remember, and I posted this on Facebook, like the angels were looking after me today, and lots of comments of people blown away.
Yeah, yeah.
Friends disappointed that they had their car broken into and their son's scooter was stolen. And here's me, thankful, grateful that I hadn't had a break in, but
Yeah.
a lot of other people had. But profound experience. I don't know how and why, but that was one of my experiences being touched by the angels, just to let me know that I'm always protected.
Yeah.
So,
And also a great reminder for everyone to, again, ask for help. I used to, if my family were flying without me or whatever, I always used to send the angels with them to protect them and look after them, and, going to bed at night, again, certain things, it actually does, and it makes you feel better.
absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
it does, again, great story of how angels can help. I've got so many stories. I'm going to tell them another time, because it's your time to tell stories about just angels in real life and how they can turn up like crazy, crazy, crazy.
I know. And I always say, if I'm struggling to sleep, I'll ask for the angels to actually allow me to have a good night's sleep, or, fall asleep quickly. And the next minute I'm asleep. So I think that the thing is, if you allow and you trust, but you've also got to set the intention. Anything is possible, right? And that's what people forget. They think it's all just make believe, but I'm a true believer. If you don't have the intention behind it, the universe won't provide.
I
So,
think the big thing, and this is probably why I've been guided to do spiritual stories, is a lot of people haven't had the experience of angels, spirits, loved ones, helping, all that sort of thing. And it's like they don't have the experience of it. They've never experienced it, so they don't really believe it's a thing. But this is where if they can hear that someone else has experienced something, that helps them to understand how it kind of works, and it does work for someone, so why would it not work for me? And so that's where, again, telling these stories is really helpful, not only as a reminder for people to ask for help, but also for them to actually know that it is a thing and that these things do work, and give it a go.
exactly. And that's why I say trust it and allow it. And you just never know what can
Yeah.
come back. And
Well,
that's
we do know because it's amazing what does happen. There is a level, it does have to be a level of belief in there, and that's why stories are really helpful. So thank you for
yes.
telling your stories. There is a missing person story that you've got for us.
Oh, yes. Okay. I'll tell you about this story. This is around COVID time. I had a lady come for a reading, and she lived in the Walpole, Pemberton area. And during this reading, I remember, hearing the name Tony. And and this was on a Tuesday, and I kept saying, who's Tony? Who's Tony? I can see this man, and Tony's sort of a solid man, but he's got red hair. Do you know Tony? And she's like, no, I don't know any Tony, but there's a Tony doing my driveway and the paving right now. And I'm like, no, no, nothing to do with that. I just kept getting this name, Tony.
Yeah.
And anyway, I said, oh, well, it'll come if it's meant to. We'll just leave it at that. And then come Friday, we got this, those text messages that everybody gets when someone's missing, right? We all got this missing text message about this man, Tony, that had been missing, right? And this was a Friday or a Saturday morning. I can't remember exact day, but basically she messages me that probably about an hour or so after and says, I know that guy Tony that's gone missing as well, and she knew the possible murderer through her connection at work, right?
Ooh.
And I was like, oh my gosh, that was such a coincidence. I think that was kind of like the soul alignment of this was going to happen. Like he wasn't actually missing during the time of the reading, but something was happening through that time. And this man, Tony, who I'd never met, but I could see him as clear as in my mind at the time delivering the reading, had red hair, and he was quite a big sort of burly bloke kind of thing. So anyway, through that experience, I sort of thought, I don't know what the message is for her, but I think there was more of a connection because she knew this man. And anyway, through that time, I kept hearing a song in combination, Cold Hard Heart by Elton John and Dua Lipa, and The Sacrifice by Elton John. And certain words, Spirit had aligned to me, or this man, Tony, had aligned to me, certain words of what I was supposed to pinpoint. And I was trying to send all this information to a friend of mine who lived in that area and was a neighbor of the family, to try and get the message across that this is what I felt he was trying to say to me about what happened. And one of the main parts that stood out to me was a touchdown from the fence line. And anyway, that really stood out to me, and I couldn't figure out what that was about. So the lady that I knew said to me, come on down and help us with the search. And I thought, oh, yeah, I'd pinpoint on Google Maps where I felt like that this man was, right? And then going to Pemberton and where the area was that I thought that this man was there. And I was terrified. I never wanted to find a missing person, dead body anything like that. But looking in Pemberton, in the areas of all the woods, you're thinking that, it's just going to be a clear area, but there's trees and there's so much everywhere in Pemberton. You're trying to find a needle in a haystack, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was down there for about 4 days, and I gave all of his friends and people all this information, but no one could really put two and two together. And I actually, through that experience, had sensed where Tony before, because obviously he was murdered, but I was actually sensing where his body had been and where they'd placed him. They'd hidden him in certain places, and I could really sense the energy. And basically, I left on the Tuesday because that was me going up on the Friday afternoon because I had clients and I had to get back to normality, looking everywhere for this man. But, like I say, needle in a haystack,
Mm.
trying to channel and trying to bring in his energy and all sorts of different things. It was so overwhelming. And I sent a friend down, and she said to me that she could see, she's no longer practicing in this industry, so I can't even tell you who it was, but she could see this body of him in a shallow grave on a farm. And she said there's no trees or anything around. So she went down to try and find him. And she had to get back because she had family. So she came back on that evening, but we still couldn't find him. And that night, before bed, I got another song come through, and that was the Della Lipa, We're Good. And I'm like, what's this about? And I kept hearing, the I'm happy and I'm on cocaine and I'm happy and we're all good. I'm saying goodbye now. And to me, I was kind of like interpreting, that experience of when we do pass, it's like that high feeling, that happy
Mm.
adrenaline feeling that the soul experiences when you go into the afterlife.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, this is a message. And I felt that Tony would have been found within 24 hours from that, because he was saying, you already tried. Thank you very much for your help, but someone else is going to find me now. And pretty much one of the farmers on that farm had found him, and he was a touch down from the fence line.
Oh, wow.
So not very far from where that fence was,
Yeah.
body was found. So obviously, that was kind of like a really interesting experience to be able to really feel into that and acknowledge and get lots of confirmation. And I just knew that he was going to turn up. I knew that he was going to be found. And, you know, in that way, it's kind of like him having peace. It was 3 weeks in from when he'd been, murdered, that they finally found him. And that's why I went into that state of I wanted to help him. But something about that pattern of him coming up in a client reading, right?
Yes. Yes.
Then all of a sudden, it's not a coincidence. These things just don't happen. And then, getting that information on the Friday or the Saturday that this man had gone missing. And I just knew the familiarity of that there was already a connection coming through.
I think it's really interesting because we've seen all those shows, like I watch The Medium and other shows where psychic mediums work with the police to find things, and you think to yourself, "Oh, that would be so cool." But I've actually seen a couple of murders as well, unsolved murders, and they've just randomly come up in readings, and of course, people who are I'm reading for obviously need to know the information. But when you can see it all and know what's happened, it's actually not as fun as you think, is it?
No, and that's the thing is I could see what had actually happened.
Yeah,
And I could actually see the incident, the fight, the brawl that these people had, and him getting shot and all of that kind of stuff. And I could actually see his body getting placed one spot, then getting moved, and then finally just being left, and the stories that were made up to where his body was not true. And I knew all of that. So yeah, I do see all of that too, Kim, and unfolding in my mind, and it's not a nice scenario to
well, it's
be in a
different. It's different to watching a movie, isn't it? Like, um, if I can try and explain, when you're watching it unfold, you can feel it as well. Like it's such a weird feeling when you're watching it unfold and all those sorts of things. And it's, I think your body goes into a bit of shock actually, because it's really quite confronting to, let's just say, have the front seat of a real life murder. It's
Yeah.
not very nice at all. So hats off to those people who do that as work, whereas we just get,
Yes.
we've only had little insights of it in our lives. But again, later on, you just go, how important is this work to unsolved mysteries and information that people don't know we can get access to, which is very, very cool. And again, when, as I said, when you're doing it, it doesn't feel that cool, but afterwards you go, no, this is actually really important that people do find out exactly what happened.
Yeah, exactly. And in that midst, the adrenaline's going, I'm in the middle of
Yeah.
nowhere, looking in the bush and thinking, oh my goodness, what am I going to do if I find him and all of that, but all I could think of in the back of my mind was I just needed to help this family. I just wanted to give them some peace. And, like even going to the police station and talking to them about what I could do and how I could help there at the Pemberton police station, they were not at all interested in the topic of mediumship or psychic stuff, which was really hard for me to get my head around, because to me, I'm like, you want to find this man, don't you? Wouldn't you want to be open to every single opportunity that is confronting you? But they weren't. They all took it as hearsay. But
Well,
yeah,
I think it's that skepticism of why, the thing that's coming through right now is, why listen to someone that could be wasting our time when we want to focus on the facts or whatever. But
yeah,
again, through experience, through these stories, this is how we change,
yeah.
perceptions of this work. So we're going to finish off with a fun story, which is your Cabbage Patch
That
story.
story. Oh yes, my
Tell us
weird
about you.
story about happened.
Tell us about your Cabbage Patch story.
Okay, well, I used to always have those friends that say that the Cabbage Patch has come alive, but well, the toys come alive, full
There's so many
stop. But
movies that happens too, right?
do they? Who knows? But my little story is a bit interesting. Back in the mid '80s, when the Cabbage Patch came out, it was a big thing, and a lot of families couldn't afford to buy that because it was quite expensive. I think they were about $100 back then, but that was a lot of money for
Yeah.
a present, you know.
Yeah.
And to get a genuine one, well, that was, quite rare. But I could afford to get myself a little tiny rubber one in a pink dress with yellow hair, and she was about this big. And I was really loved it because to me, I think I was probably, I don't know, 10 or 11 back then. I was excited because I had the closest thing I could possibly have, right? And one of my other friends, she had a collection of them as well. So I went to her house and started playing with them. And we were outside playing and probably throwing it in the air. And all of a sudden, I've lost my Cabbage Patch doll.
Oh,
And I'm
devastating.
crying and I'm beside myself. And I'm like, I love this like my baby, And I'm crying and I'm sitting there thinking, what's happened? And of course, my friend's like, bless her soul, rest her peace now, Linny. She's passed on now. But she's sitting there. She goes, it'll turn up. It'll turn up. Don't worry about it. And I went home and, a couple of days later, I said, I've got to come back to find my Cabbage Patch doll. And she said, well, let's have a look around in the backyard. And I'm calling it. And I can't remember what name I called it back then, to be honest. And I'm looking up in the tree and I'm looking around and I couldn't find anything. And then all of a sudden I hear this mama on the top of like this high pitched mama. And I looked up and there it was sitting in the tree.
They didn't talk, did they?
Right. And I'm going, what the? I looked in that spot, I swore, and there it was. So I grabbed her and of course went home and I just hearing this loud mama on the top of its lungs, calling me. And I was like, wow, imagination, who knows? But I found it. And who knows whether that was a connection to spirit or whether there was a connection in that
Sometimes
plastic
we
rubber.
don't try and work it out, right?
I haven't to this day. I just went, okay, it led me to finding it. So weird as it is.
Oh gosh, that is
What
so
would you say?
crazy. Oh my God. I feel like after this chat, there's going to be another heap of stories come up that we may have you on again for. So yes, everyone else tune into the next chat we have with Ness around all this fun
Oh
psychic
yeah, I've got plenty of
stories.
stories.
I feel like
Plenty,
we're going to have
plenty.
some more chats, but I'll get you to
Yes.
stay on the line. I'm going to just finish off the podcast for now, and we'll have a bit of a chat after. But I want to thank everyone for listening in to these stories. If you've got any questions or you want to connect with Ness, I'll have all her contact details there as well as mine. If you ever want to chat about anything, but also again, what we want to do is make this a normal thing. All these things that we're talking about, we want them to be normal conversations. Spiritual conversations
Mm.
are absolutely the best, and telling stories is the best way for people to understand how our world works. And it's really, really a very special world to be a part of, isn't it?
Yes, oh yes, I wouldn't change a thing. And it's just giving me so much gratitude and understanding and just that other connection. I came here with a purpose and it's always expanding. I'm always learning, but it's exciting. There's never a
Oh,
dull moment,
I
right?
think that's probably the exciting part of it, is that it is always evolving, it is always changing, and we are always learning. It's like anyone, I think, who has a gift. They're always trying to not trying, I don't like using that word, but getting better and better at it through different ways. But I don't know if you're experiencing this, but so much has changed over the years, and we've got access to so much more. So watch this space as we keep talking about all these fun things that we have fun doing. So thanks Ness for joining us today, and I do feel
My
like that you
pleasure.
are going to be back again with some more spiritual stories. And thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll
How
see you
many?
for the next spiritual stories podcast.
Thank you. Bye.